So you start off, tell me a little bit about yourself and how you came to Ohio State.
Yeah, so I did my PhD in philosophy at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And while I was there, I was very interested in facilitating dialogue, particularly among young children. I ran a program that I started that did dialogue facilitation in some of the local public schools. And my dissertation research was about activist ethics. So I thought a lot about conflict within activist communities and disagreements. And when this job came up, it seemed like what had happened was somebody had described all of the weird interests that I had developed over the past 10 years or so, and then put it into a job description. And so it felt almost like it was too good to be true. And then I applied and I got this, and it's been a dream job.
Excellent. So the university is spending a lot of time talking about what we call civil discourse and ethical disagreement. So what does that mean and why is it important?
Yeah, so I have the privilege of doing lots of dialogue facilitation workshops all across the university. And what people are finding is that we have a very diverse community, but ideological diversity is not a guarantee of civil discourse. Ideological diversity itself is completely insufficient for civil discourse. And what people are finding is that we need to actually have resources and skills and opportunities to bring people together across disagreements so that we can talk to each other.
That's great. So we talk about wanting students, faculty, and staff to develop skills to navigate these difficult conversations. So why is that important? Why can't we just argue? Why shouldn't we just,
So one thing I'll say is that people arguing would actually be an improvement over what I see a lot of the time, because we don't even talk to each other. Like what happens is people get siloed into little bubbles where we're not really engaging with people who disagree with us about the issues that are the most polarizing in our community. And so I actually do think that arguing would be a step in the right direction, but at least we would get some engagement. But where arguing is insufficient is that when we go into an argument, we typically have the goal of winning. We typically have the goal of proving that we're right and the other person is wrong, or convincing other people that we're right and the other person is wrong. And what civil discourse asks us to do is to assume that we have something to learn from someone who disagrees with us about the issues that really matter. I would say that a university needs to be in the business of producing knowledge. And a way that we can get knowledge is by taking people who have different perspectives and allowing them to evaluate each other's perspectives, push each other with arguments that the people might not have considered before.
So fostering disagreement, we're talking about skill building. We're talking about preparing students for this kind of conversations. So what are those skills, and is it useful later in life, and should it be a key component to an Ohio State education?
Yeah, it's a good question. So there's a variety of different units throughout the university that are offering different skills. I'll focus on what the Center for Ethics and Human Values offers, because that's the group that I just have the most intimate connection with through my capacity as Associate Director. So we have this framework for civil discourse called the 4 C's. And the 4 C's are be curious, be charitable, be conscientious, be constructive. And we see them as virtues or character traits that if you learn them, you'll be able to navigate challenging conversations. So when we can achieve a state of curiosity, we can approach people who disagree with us with the mindset that we can learn from them. When we approach people with charitability, when we're charitable towards them, we're able to state their views back to them in ways that they would recognize as their own. So we make sure that when we're having a conversation, we're actually addressing the views that the people in the room have, rather than our caricaturish misrepresentations of those views. When we're conscientious, we're taking the views that people have and we're subjecting them to scrutiny. We're thinking about how to be fair when we're evaluating the views, and how to be resilient and not get defensive when we hear critiques of our own views. And then when we're being constructive, what's happening is we're working towards common ground, where common ground might just be a shared picture of where we disagree. If we can have people disagree about an important topic and then come away from that with a shared picture of exactly what's underlying the disagreement, that's real progress.
What makes a conversation civil?
When a lot of people hear about civil discourse, what they think about is politeness. They think about holding back from really expressing your strong feelings, and that's not what we're about. When we think about civil, we're primarily thinking in terms of civic and like a civic responsibility. And so the question we're asking is, what skills do people need in order to be effective members of communities? When we think about civility in that context, we really mean a sense of respect. So if I'm having a civil conversation with you, I want to respect you. And I want you to feel like I am approaching you as somebody who can teach me something, rather than somebody who I'm going to try to convince or beat in some context.
So it's not about changing your belief system necessarily. It's listening to the other side. I may still have very strongly held beliefs, but when we have a conversation about it, we may both still have our beliefs when we're done, but the way we interact with each other is different. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So for you and me to engage in civil discourse, I don't need you to change your mind. I don't need me to change my mind. The only thing that I need is that I need to recognize that I have something to learn from you. And you need to recognize that you might have something to learn from me.
What can be in your experience, what can be the hardest part of maintaining civil discourse?
By far the most difficult thing is when people enter into a conversation with very different goals. So if you've just experienced a traumatic event and you come and talk to me about it, what I'm going to be focusing on is creating a space for healing or catharsis. If you need to just vent and get that off your chest, that's what I'm going to offer you. If you need some sympathy, I can offer that to you as well. I might repeat back to you what you're telling me and check in and make sure that I've really understood you. What I'm not going to do in that moment is to try to correct your picture of geopolitics. And so often what happens is somebody goes into a conversation with a need for care, a need for healing, a need for catharsis. And the other person goes into the conversation with a need for critical engagement, and they're trying to figure out the answer to some important question. And those two things are at odds with one another. And so what I think we need to do when we get into a conversation is to figure out what our needs are, figure out what we're actually trying to accomplish together in that moment so that we can coordinate our activities. Over the last year, there's been a big push at the university to respond to growing challenges with having civil discourse. And what I think is amazing about the Listen, Learn, Discuss platform is that it starts with this recognition that there's a lot of programs already on campus that have been doing great civil discourse work for years, in some cases decades. And so what I think Listen, Learn, Discuss does really well is it takes all those resources, which were hard to find before, puts them together in this centralized place, and organizes them effectively so that faculty and staff, students, whatever other group you are able to go onto this platform and find the resources that are relevant to your needs.
Okay, so how do I learn more?
Yeah, so the university has a great website, so you can go check out resources there. And then once you're at the website, what you'll be able to find are more detailed pages that show information about the specific programs. So you'll find links to our work over at the Center for Ethics and Human Values. You'll find work, resources associated with the Democracy Coalition and all sorts of other groups.
And these are like, some of these can be workshops. And then not just for students, they're not just for students, right? Faculty and staff can also partake.
Yeah, that's right. Just this morning, I had 3 meetings with different units on campus that were requesting workshops. And what I love about those meetings is that people come to speak with us, and they're very honest and open about the challenges that they're facing. And so if there's something that you're struggling with, there's something that your unit is struggling with, please reach out. We can come up with tailored workshops for you. In some cases, what you might want is a more broad training program. We have online training programs that are infinitely scalable and accessible. And I would just say, yeah, reach out.